all of the work and effort and conversations that these 48 people are engaging in. So thanks very much from all of us. I was at the sub-area working group for Britannia Woodland last Saturday. And you know, I speak to just one part of it, which is the value in housing of protecting affordable rental housing. And if I look at the history of our city, when we've made changes and suggested that that's one of the values, we're really great at the knocking it down and building something new. And where we fall down is the implementation of the affordability and the protection of rent. So around my table, there was some talk of, well, how do we secure that stuff? How do we guarantee that stuff? And also the definition of what affordability means is an incredibly slippery fish that seems to wriggle out of everyone's hands when they try to talk about it, especially during election campaigns and other moments. So how can we guarantee that we actually don't increase density while at the same time actually displacing a lot of people? Because I actually like density. You know, when I came here, I got to walk over to Penny's house, 30 seconds, walk down here, 10 minutes. That's great. So I'm a fan of density. I'm not against that. And our neighborhood, East Van, has always been a place that welcomes people from everywhere. So we have no problem with this. The difficulty is that we're actually kicking people out right now. We're kicking out renters and low-income people. And I lived in different apartments, cheap places, all over the neighborhood that we were discussing last Saturday. And those places, you know, if we allow even one or two more stories, they'll be demolished, and the people who live in them now evicted. And maybe they'll get to live in the future place that ideally would be built, ideally for renters, ideally with some kind of affordability. Never going to be the same rent. So I say I'm actually in defense of dinginess, if that's what it takes. I prefer dinginess to displacement. So if there's a place that looks a little less shiny than other parts of the city, that's great. That adds character. So I'm actually saying keep that. And when the idea is, oh, just give us a couple extra stories so that we can incentivize developers to come in here and build something new, the only position you give me to take is no. So that's the only thing I could say. I, like everybody else in the neighborhood, have great ideas, like you guys, for the neighborhood. But when it's all with, when it's all with the proviso that it's got to be a developer-built new building, it's got to be incentivized, and that's the logic that we're locked into. CACs and developers, big developers doing it. I can't live with it, because if you think about what's the city going to be like in 3 decades, you ask to dream 3 decades into the future. The city could be a place for billionaires, because we're on the road right now to a much richer, wealthier, higher income elite city than the one I grew up in, than the one I lived in even very recently. And so I encourage the Citizens Assembly to put their hand on the wheel and make a really sharp U-turn on this road to an elite city. And I know a few of you, and I know that's where your hearts are. I know it's a complicated machine we have to work with, but what I was seeing at my table was an encouragement to please just, can't you think of a couple more stories that would be great? You know, we promised there'll be affordability, we promised there'll be rentals, but I have not seen those promises come true. What I've seen is the wholesale renovation of a city into a different city. And I find that city, that vision of the future, to be very scary. And thank you for my 2 minutes.
Gotcha.